It's been a wild ride so far this year with wild swings and volatility in the crypto market. Tech stocks are up and down, and people are wondering what is happening with the economy. Today, I'm going to share with you how I, as the Nomad Capitalist, prepare for even the worst of times. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you are treated best. Now, I'm not going to give you an economic commentary on what's happening right now. Certainly, these are very strange times that we're in with high inflation. You have central banks around the world who are changing their course of action. You have a lot of stuff going on that has been affecting markets. I think a number of people have been spooked. I am not spooked because I am well diversified. I am the Nomad Capitalist after all. I'm going to share with you my thoughts on if there is a recession ahead, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, whether it's a decade from now, how I would prepare for that. And my philosophy here is better years too early than a day too late. I want to make sure I've got as many different areas covered so that I am protected. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm someone who, our company works with those type of people to help you create global plans. And so, again, I'm not saying that a recession is coming, but I'm saying how do you get prepared? First, let's address this issue that sometimes people bring up when we talk about investing in other countries or having citizenship in other countries, which is there's nowhere to go. My opinion, very simply, is there's always a bull market somewhere. There's always a safe haven somewhere. Let me say that again. There's always a bull market somewhere, and there's always a safe haven somewhere. We focus largely on geography. Certainly, you could find that there may be certain stocks, certain cryptos, certain real estate markets that could be outperforming others, but we're talking largely about geography. So don't think there's nowhere to go. Be diversified. I like to focus on having precious metals, having crypto, having some cash on hand so that if things get tough, I'm ready to make acquisitions, I'm ready to expand, I'm ready to weather tough times. And so I would focus on, how do I have, stability in my portfolio? But I also want to have, real estate, performing real estate in different places. I own, my homes. There's different places where I can go. And I have uncorrelated assets in things like frontier markets, emerging markets, whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, particularly dividend-paying stocks. I think one of the most successful parts of my stock portfolio in the last year has been in India. Another relatively successful area has been in Indonesia. At times, I've been in stocks in Latin America that have done very well. And so I want to be diversified. I want to look to invest in new markets, and I can say that because I've actually been there. I think what a lot of people who are looking at preparing for a recession do is they look at one country where they live in. And so that makes sense if you run a business and everything you do is in one country. But of course, what we talk about is not having everything in one country. And so let's say you've got a business. Even if it's a remote business, where you're running the business from Bangkok and you've reduced your taxes, you've cut your cost of living, you're hiring people that are more affordable. If all your customers are in the US, you haven't fully diversified. One of the things that I've looked at is how do we expand more into other areas? We have people who call us from Latin America, from Eastern Europe, from Asia. And how do we serve them more? And how do we have more people like that so that if something happens in one part of the world, we aren't reliant on that part of the world? That's one thing that I would definitely focus on. But I think that I can then take the money that I'm making from a growing business as well as other money that I'm sitting on, and I can invest in places where I'm comfortable because, again, I've spent my time there. I think you have to get over this idea that the be-all and end-all is your country. Even if you're from the United States, it definitely has an outsized impact on the world economy, but it's not the entire world economy, and there have still been spots around the world that have outperformed it. There have been spots that have remained resistant during US-led recessions, such as the global financial crisis. So I want to be diversified into other markets. One thing that I think a lot of people do if they believe that tough times are ahead is they cash out of equities, they cash into different things, they put money into cash. And so if I'm going to hold cash, one thing you could do is diversify part of that cash out of a 0 or 50 basis point environment in banks in the West, put it in countries where you get a lot more return on your money. You have some very strong, including some big-name European and Western banks in a country like Armenia, increasingly in a country like Cambodia. Less so in Ecuador, but interest rates are high there. Interest rates are high in these countries where you can go and put money. I just saw the other day in Yerevan 5.75% on long-term U.S. dollar deposits. Now, you could outperform that in the stock market. If you're holding cash, why not hold cash somewhere where instead of basis points, you're making 4, 5, 6%? I've seen, halfway decent rates from places in the Czech Republic and other countries. So, if you're going to be diversified, there's other benefits to diversifying. For example, in a recession, governments may want to raise taxes. They may have more confiscatory policies. Being financially diversified could be a good thing to do, and if you can bump up your interest rate dramatically by doing that, it's worth considering. So, first things first, there's always opportunities. There's always a safe haven. If you be diversified, then you'll understand there's always some place to go. I want to push back very clearly that if you're preparing for bad times, I think what a lot of people do is they say, well, they just get kind of defeatist about it. There's nowhere else to go. And that's simply not true. I go to these places, I see the opportunities, I see that even when one part of the world may be kind of sluggish, I've seen over the years, it's not always that way, it's somewhere else. So, what happens during a recession and how do we prepare for that? Number one, people lose their jobs. I saw Peter Schiff, who commented saying that as the Fed continues their policy of hiking rates, you're going to see people losing their jobs. You have allegedly low unemployment rates now, but what happens if people lose their jobs? Social unrest, and I think you build on more of the calls for higher taxes. I see Bernie Sanders on social media all the time. He's a good follow if you want to entertain yourself, except I'm entertained because I'm living far away and he doesn't affect me anymore for the most part. But Bernie Sanders wants to complain that Elon Musk will pay billions of dollars in taxes because the rate is lower than a nurse who will pay $5,000 in taxes. You think that's going to be ramped up or ramped down when those people are out of a job? I would go for ramped up. And I think you'll see more politicians, not just in the U.S., but all around the Western world, and the world in general, quite frankly, who will get in, who will say the answer is to simply tax people who have success. I saw one country in Asia where they want to put a one-time 20% wealth tax. Now, that even exceeds 2000 presidential candidate Donald Trump's tax, what was like 14% one-time tax of every wealthy person who could afford to pay. We have a lot of problems in the country. We need to pay. They need to pay. 20% is really incredible. You see countries that want to have 5, 6, 7% annual wealth taxes. You see other countries that want to have wealth taxes on people with as little as $500,000. You could have that in your home equity. So when people lose their jobs, you're going to see, which is not something we want, but it may be the reality, you're going to see a lot of social unrest. And if things really get bad, you're going to see calls for higher taxes. Just go back and look 13 years ago. Your tax rates went up. And I think that now you've got a lot more momentum where it's already baked in. People expect higher taxes. People expect extraterritorial taxes. People expect all kinds of wealth taxes, unrealized capital gains taxes. There's a lot more movement on that to where it's not going to be, going from 35% to 39.6% this time. It's going to be more dramatic. You have a lot more socially acceptable people who are saying tax rates should be 80%. I saw the other day 99% over a certain rate. So when people lose their jobs, that's what's going to happen. What else happens in a recession? Banks fail. I remember living in the United States during the financial crisis. I lived right across the street from the headquarters of a bank that got taken over by a Canadian bank. And thank goodness, because that was one of the banks that got saved, basically. How many? Hundreds of banks, I guess, many hundreds, just went out of business. And some people lost their money. Where you really don't see that many bank failures? Singapore. You know what the UAE did? They said, listen, we got plenty of money. We're going to insure the deposits to infinity. You don't really see that many bank failures in countries like Austria, for example. You have countries around the world that are safe havens for banking that have really never had a bank failure, or they've had one. In the U.S., you've had hundreds. Now, obviously, those are mostly small banks, and you can avoid that. But the FDIC, for example, in the United States, the bank insurance fund, is really not very well capitalized. And so maybe they capitalize it more by saying we're going to impose some kind of one-time tax on the rich, however they define that, probably you. So being diversified, not only could you get better interest rates in Singapore aren't particularly better, but you're getting not the higher interest rate, but you're getting the stability, you're getting the financial diversification, you're getting perhaps you put your money into different currencies if you believe that that's something to do. And you're protecting yourself from banks failing. Portfolios decline. Again, how am I going to be diversified to make sure that if everything that relies in the U.S. or everything that relies in China, look at the Chinese stocks last year, or even Thailand where the currency has dropped, and so therefore in U.S. dollar terms, stocks in that market have dropped, or whatever. You look at LATAM, whenever those currencies get beaten up, in US dollar terms, they get beaten up. So if you're concerned about portfolios declining that in a certain area, how do you diversify that? But I think the last thing that I really expect is, again, given everything that we read about governments wanting to take control, look at what's happened in the last 20 years, let alone the last 2, 5, 10 years. Governments are taking increasing control. What can they do to your retirement account? You think they can't change that? You think they can't bail part of that in? You think they can't bail in some of the banks? You think they can't impose all kinds of new rules? These are the things that happen to recession. And so this is not even, to me, a financial conversation. This is a conversation of, how do I prepare? Number one, I want to be prepared for chaos. Robert Kiyosaki came to Nomad Capitalist Live, and he stood on stage. He said, 3 days. Where can I go in 3 days? Where can I have a residence permit? If it's in a different country, maybe I want that country's passport. I want to have a home. I want a place where I can go. And I want to be able to get there quickly. Hopefully with some cash, or the cash is already there, or whatever the case may be. I want to be prepared for chaos. I want to be prepared for higher taxes. Be ready to exit. I want to have a second passport, so in case the most extreme tax policies are implemented, whether I'm an American or whether I'm somewhere else, I have the opportunity to say, I don't agree with this, I'm out. I have the ability to say, if someone wants to restrict my travel, I'm out. Listen, I don't want to be conspiratorial here, and I think some of the stuff that I read is probably too much. I also see that we've seen in the last 2 years, Australians can't even get into their own country. They were threatened in some cases with literal jail time for trying to get into their country. And by the way, what did people say? Even some people in our audience. Oh yeah, they should have known better. They shouldn't have taken a vacay. They shouldn't have gone to India. Oh, no, we don't want them. We'll leave them out. Citizens, not welcome in their own country. You think that, who knows what they come up with? That was one time, okay, you had a pandemic. What happens when you've got a financial issue? I think people get even more squirrely in financially bad times. So I'm going to have my second passport. I want to know there's somewhere I can go where they're not going to be like, oh yeah, Americans, we got to beef with you guys. Or oh yeah, Australians, yeah, we don't. Yeah. I want to know, I'm getting in because I'm a citizen of that country. If you are an American or Canadian, certainly a Caribbean citizenship by investment, you have a nonstop flight. If you have your own plane, you can certainly get there without a lot of muss or fuss. We've talked about the Great American Plan B, having residence in Mexico, at least as a place to go first, where you can drive over, you can walk over. Maybe some of this stuff is too aggressive, but I'm prepared for chaos. I'm prepared for higher taxes. I'm prepared for them wanting to come and take some of my money. I'm prepared for them saying, you know what, we're putting this retirement somewhere else, or doing what they did in Cyprus with bank accounts, or just saying, hey, give us a bunch of your money. Just taking it outright. I'm going to be prepared for more regulations. And so if I have a business, if my business entirely sells to one market, and if my business is located in one market, if my business has employees in one market, I don't want employees in most Western countries, or at least I don't want that many, because who knows what they could come up with. Oh, you got to pay them for the next year even though you have no money. You could be bankrupted in some cases by some of the stuff they could come up with. Look at the canceling rent, look at canceling mortgages, and go back to the global financial crisis. You did not have the same spirit of canceling student debt, canceling rent. Everything is canceled. Just cancel everything now. And you pay for it. Pay 99%. Literally saw a paper the other day saying the rich should pay 99% so that we can cancel everyone else's debt. You think if you run a business, you think it's going to be peaches and cream if you're running that business in a country that's doing that kind of stuff? I want to be diversified. They're going to have more regulations. They're going to make you pay for more stuff. It's going to be more difficult to do business. They're going to restrict, for example, hey, you can't put your money into crypto, or we're going to make it more difficult, or you can't off-ramp crypto, or who knows what it is, but more regulations that make it difficult to do business, difficult to make a profit, cut into your bottom line, your ability to live, if you're a business owner, at the worst possible time. And so, again, I'm not your financial advisor, but for me, I look at a lot of people who are holding overpriced assets. I talk to people all the time who say, I don't know where to put my money because everything like in real estate seems overpriced. If you followed, give me a moment, the Gary Vaynerchuk strategy of, I'm not going to buy print ads, I'm going to buy TikTok ads because print ads are overpriced, they're hard to measure. TikTok is, it's underpriced attention, as Gary Vaynerchuk would call it. Where can I turn overpriced assets that perhaps in a recession wouldn't do that well and turn that into an underpriced asset? maybe I go and buy real estate in the country where I can get that residence or citizenship. Turkey, maybe you say, hey, that doesn't really help me. That's not an improvement in your particular case. But hey, can't argue the real estate's pretty cheap after the lira has gotten beaten up. Plenty of countries around the world where you've got really cheap real estate. Look at a country like Albania, for example. A lot of people for about 5 or 6 years have been talking. First it was just me and some people in the industry and some hoteliers and some high-level investors. Now it's becoming more of an open secret. You're buying property on the beach for dirt cheap. This is perhaps the last place in Europe you can get that. I see similar trends that I've seen in previous years in places like Nicaragua where prices run up once people come in. Maybe you take some money and you get yourself a plan B, a place to go to, a second option by turning some overpriced asset into underpriced assets. We had one gentleman we were working with as a client who he bought an apartment building. And he's keeping one unit for himself as a place where he can go. He's not keeping the whole house. He's not keeping a mansion or a villa, but he's buying an apartment building that produces a much better yield than he would get where he's from. And he's keeping one open. So he's sacrificing a little bit of yield to give himself a place to go. And in the context of doing that, he has some immigration privileges where he now has an option. So I'm preparing, for any kind of financial downturn more than just the downturn itself. That to me is straightforward enough. I'm going to have some cash. I'm going to be ready to take, deals. I'm going to make sure my business is strong. I'm going to make sure I can keep paying my employees, keep growing. I can take advantage of opportunities that will come up when there's discounts available, not only in business, but on assets that may come up. I'm going to, make sure I'm diversified so that I'm not subject to the whims of any one country. But I want to make sure, and this is what I've been doing over the last dozen plus years, is accumulating residences and citizenships and options to where no one government controls me, because they're going to be the ones that are going to go wild during this time. And so for me, I have a rather stoic view of this because I've been doing all this work over the years, that I'm prepared. But I can also tell you that it's been difficult for me over the years. For example, when I decided to get St. Lucia citizenship, it's a big contribution to make. It's $100,000 you've got to send. And I never look back on those investment decisions or donations or whatever and say, oh, that's a bad deal. I always end up making a good personal and financial ROI. I can understand if you think that you're going into bad financial times, it's the time to hold off on doing that. My perspective, having kind of faced those headwinds before, is you will look back. Listen, if you believe your business is going to zero, if you believe that the stock market is going to zero for the rest of your life, if you believe that crypto is going to zero for the rest of your life, then I guess that nobody can help us. What you need is a bug-out shelter somewhere, and by the way, I would suggest that you have that outside of your home country too. But if you believe in the fundamentals of the assets and the businesses that you're part of, then for me, taking out an insurance policy before tough times is more valuable even than taking it out before good times, because on good times, you're saving, you move somewhere else, you reduce your taxes. Before bad times, you can not only, be ready to save taxes all the way back up, but you're also protecting yourself from all the chaos that's going to ensue. And so those are the two aspects for me of how do I prepare for a recession. I do it with all the strategies we talk about, knowing that they're going to be even more valuable in difficult times. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.